I'm back. We took a break for the holidays. I hope you took some time for some self care. It's El Michelle Smith here with the Culture Soup Podcast. I'm your host and your executive producer. For those of you who are new to this, some of you are true to this. It has been a wild ride, 2 years straight, and I finally took a break, y'all, after doing what's 52 times 10 weeks plus some bonus episodes, over 200 episodes. I needed a break. I hope you took some time too, because you know what? 2020 and 2021 have been nuts. Can I tell you? They've been crazy. And it's like things just keep piling on top of us. But there's some really great issues that have been raised in this. Some of them are a little treacherous, some of them a little morbid, because we've lost so many lives. And, shout out to everyone out there who's struggling health-wise and also with their family members. If you've lost loved ones, if you lost colleagues, you know what? Our hearts go out to you and we're praying for you because we're all in this together. At least that's the way we should be thinking about it, right? But the other thing is this: leadership has come into question and has for quite some time. But there's a silver lining here. We might even say it's a pink and green one. Yeah, shout out. When I'm recording this, it's J15. It's January 15th. It is Founders Day for Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Of course, I'm a member of that. And it's 113 years of sisterhood, and we're celebrating that. But that also tees up the day that this show will air, and that is Inauguration Day, January 20th on a Thursday. The first Madam Vice President will be sworn in during Inauguration Day with President-Elect Joe Biden, which made me think that it might be good to have somebody who has thought about this a little bit. In fact, she's written about it. Her name is Charisse Jones, and she writes for the USA Today. And I'm excited to finally meet her by Skype. And also, she is a new friend of mine. As you know, only friends make it onto this show. You cannot pitch this show. That's right. But you must be a friend. And I have friends old and new. And I am pleased to say that my fellow National Association of Black Journalists member, Charisse Jones, is joining me today. Hey, Charisse, how you doing?
Hey, I am so happy to be here. Happy New Year. Thankful for the new friendship and ready to chit chat about all of the great things that we hope will be happening this year.
Fantastic. And guys, I got to tell you, leading up to the election, I believe it was pre-election or post-election that you wrote the article. I can't remember.
It was actually right after the election.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think within a couple of weeks.
Yeah. So right after the election, Charisse penned a very thoughtful article for the USA Today that talked about how Kamala Harris's election might very well shift the way people in corporate America view Black women in leadership. And we're going to talk about that because, as you know, I've written a book called No Thanks, 7 Ways to Say I'll Just Include Myself. And it zeroes in on that very topic, how women of color and Black women are not centered in the workplace. And we have leadership aspirations. So how does that work? So, Charisse, as we jump into this conversation, what do you say we have a culture soup moment?
Let's do it.
Awesome.
I'm excited.
Awesome. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, the Culture Soup Moment has everything to do with the premise of social media being culture soup. In other words, we've got lots of underrepresented groups driving conversations and trends online on the social sphere. And you've got to be under a rock. Maybe you're not even on Twitter. If you're not on even TikTok or Clubhouse, maybe you don't know that the trending topics right now are around our country's leadership. And of course, there was an impeachment that happened, the second one in a row for the guy that's there now that we're trying to move on from on the 20th, which is today, Inauguration Day. But you also know that when Senator Kamala Harris became Madam President, Vice President-Elect Kamala Harris, the Twitter sphere, the TikTok sphere, the interwebs went nuts. And there's a reason why. She's our first Black, and not just female, Vice President-elect, and she's our first Pacific Asian Islander. This is huge. What'd you say, Charisse?
It is momentous. And I think that when you talk about social media, a really good point to bring up is part of the reason that she got that appointment, that she was picked by Joe Biden, was Black women, coming together, activists, media personalities saying, we want a payoff for our work.
Right.
We deserve to be in leadership. We're always doing the work of this political party, and we want a Black woman in that space. And so, her ascension, I think, represents not only her talent, but all of the talents that came together from that movement to make sure that we were recognized in that way. And it culminates on this day.
It's amazing because so much of what's going on in this political arena that led up to the elections and even thereafter, because we had runoffs in Georgia where Black women played a huge role in moving the needle in some states that weren't supposed to be blue.
I think that's what's so interesting is that not only do you have Kamala in the spotlight, Kamala Harris, but Stacey Abrams.
Yes.
And all of those organizers who are getting that moment in the spotlight because it's so clear the role that we play and how deserved we are of recognition and being able to dispense power and not just help other people attain it. And so everything that happened after the presidential election has, I think, really made that clear as well.
Absolutely. And the book, and I've shared it with you, No Thanks, really centers on this.
Love
and
it.
Folks, I want you to understand that what happens in the political sphere has everything to do with what happens in the corporate sphere. There is no separating it. And you may say, oh, we don't talk politics at work. That's not the point. It's the human dynamic. And what we saw with this political phenomenon that happened with Joe Biden choosing a Black woman in response to kind of it was a large outcry from people that understand that time and time again, Black women have come to task and we have done the thing. We're overqualified. That's what the U.S. Census says. We are the most educated group out there. We have more advanced degrees than any other group. Right. And we start businesses more than anybody. We are starting small businesses at a higher clip than any other female segment, which is leading the way. So women are leading the way, period. But here we are with these overachieving, highly educated Black women who deliver and over-deliver and clean up messes over and over and over again. What is the message here? What might be what we see moving forward based on Senator Kamala Harris, who was also a presidential candidate, by the way.
Right.
We see her breaking ground in a way that no other woman has done before. What's the implication?
Well, I think that first of all, we have to look at, and I know you know this so well, that life is political.
Yeah.
Right. So when we talk about the political arena being separate, no, it's not, because those dynamics play out in the workplace, in school, in relationships, in spiritual institutions. And so we have to understand that. I think that Kamala Harris's ascension basically opens up the imagination of white corporate America, seeing Black women centered in that way. And maybe just as important or more importantly, it opens up the imagination of our children.
Yeah.
Our little girls and our little boys, to know that you really can do whatever you set out to do. You can break through any ceiling. And that's very critical, because if you can't imagine it for yourself, there's no way that you can get there. Nobody can give you the equality that you talk about so beautifully in your book. And so I think that that's really significant. But I also think we have to be very honest about the fact that just because white people's imaginations open up doesn't mean opportunities are going to be flowing. Absolutely. That we still have to present ourselves, center ourselves, and demand a seat at the table in our share of power, which we so deserve.
Absolutely. And now seems to be a critical time to do absolutely that. With all of the, tragedy and sickness and job losses and furloughs and Gosh, you name it. We wake up every day with something new. Online school, I have that going on right in the room next to me. All of the stress is happening, and the brunt of it being on women, especially Black women and women of color. It would seem counterintuitive to say, now's the time to step up and lead. But there's a reason to say that. I go on in the book to say, we've got all of these corporations making these pledges, putting up their black tiles on Instagram. Let's call them right now.
Exactly.
on the promises that they're making. Don't you agree?
Put your money where your mouth is. We don't want to just hear slogans. We don't want to see these beautiful statements, these flowery statements on Instagram and on the web. We want to see real change. And I think things have been so dire, literally dire, when it comes to illness, when it comes to police brutality, that people are just at the end of the rope. They're fed up.
Yeah.
And we don't want incremental change. We don't want to tiptoe. We don't want to put out these olive branches and kind of wait another 20 years. We want change today.
Yes.
Because we have earned it.
Yes.
And waiting another week, another month, that's another how many lives?
Yes.
We dominate the essential workers that have been going out to the fast food places and the meatpacking plants, putting our lives on the line to keep the rest of society going. We have seen the disparities in our healthcare system. We have seen the continued killings of Black people throughout the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I think people are saying enough is enough. We have always pushed this country toward being what it claimed to be, but was not. And we're sick of pushing you. Now we want deliverance.
Yes.
And I think that's the moment that we're in.
And here's the thing. We can't wait. Like you said, we can't wait on somebody else to do it for us.
No.
We have to step up. And here's the difference between ourselves and our parents and even our grandparents. We have the power of this education that I keep talking about, that we over-index in, and we have the power of technology. And no one has demonstrated that more than Stacey Abrams. Even when that election, you know what? It could be argued that it was stolen from her. Okay, we know about voter suppression. She was able to turn those tables and turn Georgia blue. And she did it herself. She didn't wait on anybody.
No, she did it step by step, plank by plank, voter by voter. There's another woman, and her last name escapes me, and I hate that. It's Latasha
Morgan.
Brown.
Is it Brown? Brown, you're right. It's Brown.
It is Brown.
I follow
Black
her on
Voters
Twitter.
Matter. She's amazing.
Yes.
And she has been in the background doing the work like so many of us do.
Yes.
The hard work for years. And is finally getting a little bit of that shine and a little bit of that recognition. But it is women like her and Stacey who have made so much possible and have made us be able to reimagine a landscape where the South can be progressive. Where there may be a Black woman governor of Georgia in the next election if Stacey Abrams runs again. So I think the opening of imagination is a very important thing because you have to be able to envision it, to believe it, to pursue it. But then you have to really say, we're not going to take this. We want change that is meaningful and significant now.
And absolutely, we have it in our DNA. I talk about in the book that one of the things that we have as our secret sauce is resilience. And that's because we hear the word no all the time. All the time. And guess what? It was amazing to hear Senator Kamala Harris say this after she was elected as Vice President-Elect. She said, I eat no for breakfast. And I hadn't actually heard that before. I wrote it in my book.
You wrote it?
I wrote it in my book. I said, rock star leaders eat no for breakfast because we know it's a matter of numbers. No's get us closer to our yes. And these women that we're talking about have demonstrated it.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that too, Michelle, because, we had all the violence that happened in the Capitol. And when you talk to some people, they've been very dispirited by that and discouraged and frightened. But I think that remembering that there's so many no's before you get the victory is critical. And our history illustrates that.
Yes.
And I think we have to really remember that. Remember the wisdom, the words, look at the protests of our elders and our ancestors to get that. Like, yeah, this is, it's a bad moment in many ways, but it's a promising moment too.
Yes.
And that's what we have to hold on to.
And so many preachers and wise people have always said, look for the message in the mess. Y'all, this is in our DNA. This is in our culture. We know that. I mean, we've heard it from the pulpit, right? It's our opportunity to look for the opportunity. And it's so wise of you to say, even with the terrorism that was on Capitol Hill, the way you look at it will have everything to do with how we move forward. And the fact is, someone raised it to me the other day. Those folks that think the way they do, they're becoming more vocal. So we know exactly who they are.
Right. Well, that's true. I mean, I think that, something that people don't think about a lot is, losing candidates always get tens of millions of votes, right? So you've always had people who had this very different mindset. And I think that the airing of it, the fact that people are upfront with it, is a good thing because it makes the country have to recognize what has always been here, but which was a lot easier to deny. And now you can't do it.
Yes.
You did see, I just wrote another story about the disparity in the treatment of the people who rioted the terrorism in the Capitol. And the way the Black Lives Matter protesters were. I mean, it's right there for the entire world to look at.
Thanks to these devices.
So it's just the conversation. Right.
Technology is going to make the difference. And, you can look at these things as necessary evil, but we wouldn't be on the road where we are now, even going back to Trayvon Martin and the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement, if it were not for mobile social. Because that became a trending hashtag on Twitter, and we haven't been the same since. We've been able to shine a light on this phenomenon, the killing of Black men and women at the hands of officers. And people have been able to open their eyes, at the very least recognize it. Maybe they don't do anything about it, but they know. It's on the evening news.
Right. Well, it's a way to, put that spotlight on something instantly. I mean, if you think about it, if Tulsa, if there had been a Twitter when the massacre happened, or when Rosewood happened, or so many other tragedies and devastating incidents in our history. And with this, you can bring attention, you can spread a message, and you can also spark a rallying cry.
Right.
You can organize, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, there certainly is that negative side to it too. There's the trolling and there's the ugliness, but it also can be a really productive tool. And I think that we've seen that a lot in recent years.
Charisse, before you go, any last thoughts for Black women as we go deeper into 2021 and whatever it has for us, with the example that is before us in the embodiment of our Madam Vice President-Elect Kamala Harris?
I think that Black women should look at this as this is a new season. And it is a season that is so ripe with possibility. To have a Black woman at that level, to have a Stacey Abrams that helped her get there, and all the other Black women, the LaTosha Browns, and those whose names we don't know.
Right.
That I think centering ourselves is critical for self-care, for our own health, but also because we deserve it. And I think it's a very ripe moment to make people back up their proclamations, their slogans with action, and to take our seat at the table.
I love that. I love it. Charisse, it's been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the Culture Soup podcast. And you have anything special you're writing coming up soon that we should be aware of?
I actually have a couple of stories about the origins of Black and white in this country, where this whole idea of race came from and how it's been used to divide us and what we can do to try and finally rectify, that systemic ill that has really riven this country for so long. So please keep an eye out for that.
I love that. Yes, the racial constructs. Very interesting. We have Dr. Henry Louis Gates coming on in the next couple weeks. So that's a great way to tee things up. He'll be talking about his new book and his documentary, The Black Church, and of course, Finding Your Roots. So, Charisse, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate it. Where can people find you online and follow you?
Well, C. Jones at usatoday.com and at Charisse Jones on Twitter. So please look out for me and what I'm doing. And this was a wonderful day. Happy Inauguration Day. Happy New Year. And let's step into our new season with power.
Awesome. Awesome.